Everybody, welcome. I'm going to go ahead and record this. So welcome everybody to your Friday morning session. So this morning session, what I'd like you to do is to test something. Everybody to your Friday morning session. Hang on. So okay, here we go. So great. So you can test something that's real to you so that in a little bit you can see what's different. And I love to test and retest because it's nice to know that whatever this is, whatever this matrix energetics and beyond and everything else that we use in these videos, these transmissions, these ways to help you shift things for yourself and heal conditions and be what you want to be. What's cool is to test something. So that if you notice that your neck is better afterwards, or your shoulders are better afterwards, or you're bending backwards better, or you're walking around is different, if you notice that something's different, then you can make note of that. And what's cool is it's not just your shoulder or your neck that changed. It could be anything. It could be your finances. It could be your relationships. It could be how your family is. It could be your health, different conditions, the way people treat you. And it's kind of a funny thing. You might not notice it and you might not put it together and say, oh, this caused this. But if you start to notice, oh, you know what? After this session, the neck felt better, or your neck felt better, or your back felt better, or you felt a little taller, or you walked around a little different, or you felt a little looser. And if afterwards you notice that, then you might notice what else is different since this session. And I've got something really cool for you, a way to get a free session in a little bit. So hang on for that and I'll tell you all about it. It's something that's coming up real soon. So, you know, when I get questions asked like, how do you do this matrix energetics? And what do you how do you do it? And how does it actually work? And the thing is, I asked a lot of the same kind of questions when I was first hearing about it. And this was back in, I guess, around 2008, 2009. And I ended up taking my first class in, I believe, August of 2009. It might have been September, but it was right around then in 2009. And my good friend, Kim Burnham, PhD in integrative medicine, kept telling me to just take it because it's mind-blowing fun. And so I read the first book, Matrix Energetics, and by Richard Bartlett, and I believed him. I was like, yeah, this is true. I can believe what he's saying is true. These healings have happened and people did get all sorts of changes, and I know what he's saying is true. So I'm going to try to do it. I'm going to kind of go do it in my clinic. I had a clinic in San Diego with 5 therapists working for me. And we were always testing and then retesting, testing before we saw somebody and then retesting afterwards, all sorts of conditions so that we could tell that what we did either worked or didn't work. And that's how you get better as a practitioner. You keep testing and seeing what works. And so I went back to the clinic and it was just my sessions were a little bit better, but not a lot better. And I'm like, oh, okay, it's not quite that, but I read the book. I believe it. What's going on? So then I got DVD and CDs of Matrix Energetics and how to use it. And I went back to the clinic and I tried to do it. And it still was just a little bit better, but not like the magic that I was reading about in the book. And then Kim got me a bunch of MP3s of the interviews, a bunch of interviews with Richard Bartlett and Mark Dunn and all sorts of interviews about it. And I was like, yeah, this is true. I can tell this works. It's like, it's obviously working for these guys. How is it working and how can it work for me? And so I tried to do it and I still wasn't getting it. And so then I ended up taking my first class, and in the very first day, they had us go practice. They said, okay, go ahead and try it. And I was like, okay. So I did it and it worked. So much so that my wife fell backwards and Kim caught her and I said, no way. And my wife was like, yeah, way. And it was just this crazy time. And so every time I practiced it over that 3 days, people were having all sorts of changes. Their range of motion was improving. They were happier. Some of them were falling down. Some of them weren't. It's not important that you have to fall down or have this big dramatic thing that happens during a session, but some were, but everybody was getting a change. And then afterwards, we walked around after 3 days and just felt kind of like, a little woozy and a little bit like you're kind of like a little altered and like, you know, you've been drinking a little bit or something. And we're like, well, that's interesting. I wonder if, you know, if we can do this thing. So I went back to the clinic and, you know, I was seeing people every day for 8 hours a day. And so testing things, and I would work on people. And then you did this thing, this matrix energetics, and then people were having big changes. And I had one lady that walked in, and she was running a little late. And my friend Kim told me, well, and it was her first session, and she was filling out her paperwork. And my friend Kim said, well, you know, she's working for me at that time. And she said, well, you can always go in the room and set it up so it's done, Ralph. And I'm like, oh, yeah. So let me go in and do that. So I did this way of setting the space up so that it would already be done by the time the client showed up. And she walked back and she told me all about all these conditions, environmental sensitivities, chemical sensitivities, chronic pains. She was on disability. She had couldn't carry a purse on her shoulder because it hurt. She had anxiety, depression. And I was hearing all this. And I said, okay, well, go ahead and stand up. And I did what's called the Matrix Energetics 2-point, which is just a technique. And she turned to me and she said, what are you doing? And, you know, I'd just taken my first class. And so I talked a little bit about energy. And she spent the rest of the hour rolling around on the floor. And she thought she was coming to a physical therapy clinic and just get, you know, regular therapy, lie on a table. But she spent the hour lying on the floor and rolling around and doing stuff. And I wasn't telling her to do any of that. And I was following her around because I thought I should at least look like I'm doing something, right? I'm getting paid. And afterwards, she was like, oh my God, what was that? And she had 6 sessions because the doctor told her to come for 6 sessions. And every session was a version of that. And she was telling me that she was feeling really good and that all these conditions were no longer bothering her. And so she was gone for 6 months and she hadn't come back. And I was like, wow, I wonder what happened. You know, she didn't come back. It was so cool. And so I emailed her and she said, you don't understand. I knew the instant my anxiety and depression went away. And I'm like, whoa. And so that was my first experience with Matrix Energetics. And I had a student later who came and had 8 weeks with me. And she had called me up from, and you're actually in a session right now. So you might be noticing some changes and shifts even right now. And I'll tell you how that works and what's going on with that in just a little bit. But I had a student that called me from Mississippi State. And she said, I want to come do my last internship, physical therapy internship at your clinic. And I'm like, okay, let's fill out the paperwork. Come on in. So she came in for 8 weeks. And in the first few weeks, I thought, well, I'm not going to teach her Matrix Energetics. You know, it's like it's something that she should take a class in and learn, I suppose. But she's going to be in it, and I know she's going to get it on a level that's beyond words and without intellect to start with, and then she'll get it with the words. So for the first 3 weeks, she was hanging around with me, and I could feel that she was getting it. Because Matrix Energetics is kind of like that. It's, you kind of get it, you're soaking in it. You're soaking in it right now. And then about 3 weeks into it, she took a class. She went to Chicago, took the class, came back, and the next 5 weeks was pure magic. And we were seeing all sorts of changes and all sorts of people, really, really fun. And on her last day, she said, she told me, Ralph, you have ruined me for physical therapy. And she was smiling, and, you know, she could tell that the world was completely different. She came in as a regular human and she had this experience, and now she knew that she actually had magic in her hands and she knew how to use it. And on her last day, she gave me my Harry Potter wand. Isn't that cool? And we're in the Harry Potter room right now. And she told me a story that I'm going to tell you now that blew me away. So she said, Ralph, I think I know why I came to your clinic. And I'm like, okay, what happened? She said, well, before I came, my brother graduated from chiropractic school, and he had a severe burn on his hands. And they even talked about amputating fingers and all sorts of stuff. And he had this miraculous recovery. and his finger's totally healed. You can't even tell that there's a problem anymore. And she said, I think what happened is I came to your clinic and learned this. I time traveled back, shifted him, and so now I had to come and play it out in real life. Now, she was a regular person before she met me and interacted with this work. And that was her experience afterwards. And with Matrix, it's kind of like that. We could do a lot of talking about it, and we could do a lot of trying to figure it out and think about it. But if you think about it, like, I don't even know how Zoom works, or how I'm on a wireless device and talking to some people live and other people will be watching this later. I don't know how that technology works. You know, how does it travel through the air? And then how is information like that? And how can you see me? But I do know how to use it. And so it's much the same way with this matrix energetics. You don't have to know what it is, what it is, or how it works. I mean, I don't know if anybody really knows, but it's kind of cool to know how to use it and to realize that you are magic and that you're soaking in it right now. So for you right now, total perfected essence. Think center line. Think everything is perfect. One of the coolest things I found about, well, there's so many cool things about this work, this stuff, but I just saw how easy it is, how it's the easiest thing you'll ever do, because there's no doing about it. There you go. So if you like, you might want to check and notice what's different for you right now. If you were to notice what you're noticing, what might you notice? Now, if I didn't know that you could set up a space beforehand, would I have ever found that? Maybe, maybe not. And so what's cool about this is, as we play in this field, this infinite possibility field, we can notice some of the places that we might want to change our rules, our rule sets, and maybe there's a different way to play, and maybe somebody can give you some information like, hey, why don't you do this? And you're like, wow, really? We can do that? I had a client that came to see me, and this guy had brought his wife because she had all these chronic conditions. And I was working on her, and he stopped and said, wait a second, what's going on? Because his neck had a lot of chronic pains and stuff for a long time, and it wasn't hurting anymore. And he's like, wait a second, what's going on? So even if you're watching this later, or even if I'm working on one person, other people can have a shift. And what I'm doing is, years ago, I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we could do a group session where people could come in every month online and have a session and have shifting. And so every month they'd be with us, and they'd be floating in this. They'd be soaking in this, so they could get it, kind of like that student I had. Yeah. So if you're interested in something like that, if you're watching live this Sunday, I do my once a month session. It's called Miracles, Magic, Healing, and More. I've been doing it for a few years, every single month. And it's been really cool. The people that are with me and have been with me, you start to get it. You start to soak in it, and then you start to realize, oh my goodness, it's not about doing anything. It's about this. So if that interests you, you can have a free month. You can have the first month free and see if you like it. See what you notice, see what changes. And I'll put links up here. It's I'll have to put links in the description below, and afterwards, if you watch it, there'll be links up here. So there'll be descriptions below with the link. Let me go just see what that link is. Let's see. No, it's not that. Let me just go grab it. You're still soaking in it, by the way. Yeah, so it's here's the link. ralphhavens.com/free miracle session. ralphhavens.com/free miracle session. And so if you want to give this a try, this Sunday at 12 noon Pacific time, I'm going to be doing it live. The cool thing is, even if you sign up and you watch it later, you still have a shift. And so if it's interesting to you, give it a try. I'd love to hear what you think about it. And I'm going to go ahead and stream this on Facebook Live in just a moment. And I'll see you all tomorrow. All right. Bye now.